Well, good morning, CSL Greater Boston and Facebook Live family. Welcome to our Sunday celebration, and we are here at 50 Dudley Street in Cambridge, Massachusetts, as we look around the room and see construction going on in our building as they redo the outside. Yay! So it's going to be pretty and beautiful. We're looking forward to that. So we are a community of love and spirit and conscious spiritual seekers. Would you agree?
Yes.
And we are looking to be conscious in the world. That is what we do here. So I am Rev G. Stewart, and I, along with Rev Ed Tansey, are the founders and ministers of this amazing community. This, like all centers, we are a community that learn, study, and practice the science of mind philosophy, which was founded by Dr. Ernest Holmes. And what science of mind is it is the study of life and the nature of the laws of thought. Now, Ernest Holmes said that we are a teaching and practicing order. And so we do teach classes. So we ask you to feel free to go to our website, cslboston.org, to learn more about our community, see our purpose in the world, and look into classes, what you might be interested in taking. And of course, there's a great contact number there for you if you wish to call. We're more than happy to answer your call and assist you with anything that you need. Now, one thing that we do here in this community is we practice the principle, or what I call the core concept number one, which is oneness. And that means we follow all that that means and entails in our lives, how that shows up. At this center, we are radically inclusive and celebrate all paths that lead to the God of one's understanding. And if you don't like the word God, use any word that speaks to your heart. I used love in the early days until I had fully healed the word God for myself. There's also infinite intelligence, universal good, so many different words that we can use for this one power. It doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is that you understand that the infinite energy exists everywhere and that we are using it all the time with our conscious thought. So that is the important thing. Plus the subjective that's going in there too that we don't realize. So we got to clean up our work, clean up our minds, and clean up what we want so we can appear in the world the way we want to appear. So I would ask our wonderful people who are visiting us on Facebook to consider us in your circulation and tithing practice, and you can support us with your tax-deductible contribution, which you can make right there at cslboston.org. Our community thanks you in advance for your support. So we're coming to the ending of our annual theme of spirituality in action, and this month, November, is spiritual guidance. I stand for spiritually motivated moral leadership. And I think that that's a powerful realization. And we'll talk about that more as we go in and where that theme came from. So today's talk is spirituality. So it's a perfect reading. Thank you so much, Liza, for the reading this morning, because that was a perfect reading for us to be in that place. So what I'd like to do today is I would like to review the November theme, where it came from, and talk about that. I would also like to talk about how Ernest Holmes reflected leadership, principle, and spirituality in action when conflict arose in the organization. And I'd also like to talk about the fact that we are spirit in form and all that that means. And life, or spirituality, is our inside-out job. So those are the things I want to talk to you about today. So let's begin with the theme for November. As I have mentioned before, we are following the prophetic justice principles, and those came from Reverend Dr. James A. Forbes of Riverside Church. And this month we're doing the 10th principle that he came up with. And these are ways that he says that those of us who are communities of faith, we should judge our leaders, not judge our leaders, but we should look at our leaders' policies using these principles to see that we are being inclusive, kind, loving, and all of those different things. So he says in his number 10 principle, provide moral leadership. Does the policy lead by example, doing the right thing and holding the right lessons for our children and our citizens? Does it promote a more ethical society and uphold trust in public offices? These are powerful realizations right now in a world that we have that appears to be in a conflict or a separation consciousness, because there are energies in the world right now that are choosing to feed separation versus oneness and inclusivity. So our place in the world is so powerful and so important at this time. And I always say that I need to look at my at my leaders in the world. So I would say all of our political leaders, everything else, and look at them and look at this and say, what of those are they not living up to? And what do I need to do about it? Do your spiritual work about it. Now, when we speak of moral leadership, we're not talking about religiously moral, because sometimes when we talk about religiously moral, it can seem pious and limited and separated. We're talking about spiritually moral, which to me actually means kindness, inclusivity of all, love, compassion, acting as the individualized expressions that we are of the one mind. So does that make sense? The difference between the idea of moral, when we talk about moral, because there are many people, I remember in the day there was the moral majority, and personally I didn't feel that they were very moral. But they felt like they were, and they felt like they needed to say that. But if we're not being inclusive, then am I being that in the world? So we need to ask ourselves that question when things show up in your life. So I have to say that I have really enjoyed these prophetic justice principles that Reverend Forbes came out with, Reverend Dr. Forbes, because I think that they've been very powerful and they've been really interesting to follow as we go through the months. He had 10 of them, so 10 of the months we've been going through that. Of course, January is always, back to basics of science of mind, so we need to go back to understand and remember who we are. And then, of course, the holiday month of December is always full of all kinds of wonderful and exciting things. So, anyway, so a great example of spirituality in action that I find in the world right now, and I somehow ended up on her mailing list, but I still enjoy reading her emails, is Marianne Williamson. She's showing up in the world and speaking our language in an arena where it has not been spoken. And I think it is wonderful because it's opening consciousness. It's opening possibility in the world. And it's speaking to people's hearts because she's speaking in a language of love, of inclusivity, and of oneness. And that's what it's about. We show up in whatever we feel we are called to show up in. And she has chosen to be called and to listen to that call and to step forward. So that's what it's about. It's about possibility thinking. And that's where we are. Are we not possibility thinkers? We definitely are. Looking at what's the possibility instead of getting stuck in what's wrong or what's separate or what doesn't work. And that's how we grow. And it's also how we grow the world around us, is it not? Because if I am doing that in myself, I am opening the opportunity for anyone who comes in contact with me to do that as well. Would you agree? So it's powerful. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to look at how Ernest Holmes handled conflict and how he reflected leadership, principle, and spirituality in action when confronted with conflict in the organization. I want to share this with you. In 1945, a time when racism was the accepted norm in our country, which was not an acceptable thing, but it was the accepted norm, or it was the appearance at that time. So Ernest Holmes knew that it did not fit with his idea, with the organization or our idea of oneness. So he needed to speak to his community at that time. Mainly because the Science of Mind magazine decided to change how they listed the Los Angeles area churches. They chose to change from normal alphabetical order of churches to move the East Los Angeles church, that normally would have been first on the list, to the end of the list and added the designation colored. Now, Ernest was not a man who would stand for that which appeared less than perfect. So, now he could have just gone to the magazine and told them, hey, you need to change that back. But Ernest Holmes was a teacher and found a much better way to bring the organization back into oneness and be that guiding light of truth that we stand for. And in oneness, we don't say colored, we don't say separation, right? So he knew that was not within our alignment, and he knew he needed to teach a lesson in a way that was opening up for everyone to hear, not just going quietly to the magazine and saying, fix that. Because then it's not seen, it's not a part of it. So what did Ernest Holmes did? He called up Reverend J. Arthur Twain, who was an African-American minister in our movement in the East Los Angeles church, and asked if he could speak the next Sunday. And here is what transpired. So Dr. Holmes took his place at the rostrum and waited. Soon you could hear a pin drop. Still, he waited. It was a standing room only crowd. Now, even the standees, not even the standees, whispered or moved. At last, he spoke. I have been told that too many non-Caucasians attend these lectures. True, there are Caucasians and non-Caucasians in this congregation, but this we must affirm. We are all children of one living God, one life that permeates all, without exception, one intelligence that governs all, and most important, every man and woman who abides in the universe is a significant identity in the one universal consciousness. Our doors will forever be opened to all. Whoever you are, be proud. You are a divine idea in the mind of God. And everyone in the room applauded. And as Ernest left, he said, that takes care of that. And of course, the next issue of the Science of Mind magazine had a simple list of the church in alphabetical order with no designations. His work had been done. But he chose to be spirituality in action. He chose to step into the world and say, how do I do this in a way that opens hearts, opens minds, and shifts consciousness? And that's how we show up in the world. And that's how we need to work on ourselves so that we can show up in the world. Because as he said, we're a teaching and practicing order. And that is exactly who we are. So as we discuss spirituality, we have to look at the fact that we are spirit in form. Right? Form, of course, being our physical bodies. But are our physical bodies, is our physicality, our humanity, the truth of who we are? It's an outpicturing, yes.
I think you can, your consciousness is reflected in your form. In some
It is reflected in your form, absolutely. Absolutely. So here's the things that I want to go over here as we talk about this, is that we are spiritual beings having a spiritual journey in a physical body. We have to remember that we are not having a human experience, because that means we are indulging in duality. Because if I'm having a human experience, then that's different than a spiritual experience. Right? And that is a sense of duality. So we have to be in that place of understanding that we are I want to repeat that because I think it's very important that we are spiritual beings having a spiritual journey in a physical body. So we don't get hooked up in that idea that, the body is our only truth, because we know that behind the body is all spirit, right? All the universe, all the intelligence, all the creativity. And so the body is an outpicturing, is effect. And so if we get stuck in the body, then where am I? I'm stuck in effect instead of going back to cause. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So good. So in this physical body, we must know the secret of spiritual power. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. Because before we came here, many of us, we may have had glimpses of it, ideas of it, whatever we were doing to try and get to know it more, but we didn't truly know our power. And that's what I love about Ernest, is he really showed us that we do have this power. And so this is what Ernest Holmes tells us. The secret of spiritual power is a consciousness of one's union with the whole. Notice it's a capital W, whole. And the availability of good, again, a capital G. Because, Emma Curtis Hopkins, there was God and good, they were interchangeable. Because they were the same thing to her. So, we are one with a universal creativity, which is the God of theology, the spirit of mysticism, the reality of philosophy, and the principle of science. God is accessible to all people. Not just the people who come here. Everybody. And some of them are using this energy unconsciously, are they not?
Yes.
And that's okay. Because you know what? I used it unconsciously. Anybody else use it unconsciously for a few years? More years than I care to mention, right? So it's important to realize that it is accessible to all people. So when I see someone who is out of alignment, I can see that God is accessible to that person. And what am I doing? I'm setting a higher consciousness, am I not? I'm setting a higher consciousness for them without doing anything other than knowing the truth. That's all you have to do. Isn't that great? So, it's a powerful, powerful realization. So this God or good is where we find our spiritual power, and we find that it is within us, right? We don't have to go out here for it. I don't have to do all these things over here to make it happen, because it's already happening inside of me. I have that power. I am in that power. So if I want to use this power, I have to recognize that I am spirit in human form using or having a spiritual experience, right? Because when I forget that, and I get into the effect of the body, what happens? I separate myself from the truth, right? And I don't want to separate myself from that truth. So I have to understand, again, I just like to say this again, that if I say I'm having a human experience, I am allowing my mind to buy into duality. I am not having a human experience. I may have experiences that are less than perfect, but then I go to the truth. Does that make sense? Because we can have those experiences that appear to be less than perfect. And yet, sometimes in retrospect, have you ever noticed that when you have something going on in your life that feels like it's an absolute pile of doo-doo, and you go, God, why is this going on? But as you move beyond it, and you get into your stronger power, you can look back and say, oh, that was building something in me. That was making a difference in my life. Everything that led up to who you are right now is in perfect order. That's crazy, but true. It's always happening for our highest and best, even if we ignore it. And we've all been there, have we not? I've ignored it. I said, yeah, God, take that. We're not talking about it. Anybody been there? We've all been there. So in oneness, there can be no separation. We experience separation, and sometimes it feels real, doesn't it? But we have to remember the truth, and that is that capital T truth, that it is not real. And we do not have to accept it. So I must do the work to restore my alignment with the oneness. Would you agree? That's my job in the world. It's core concept number one, oneness. Get back into alignment with the oneness. Anytime I find myself outside of it, I need to move back to it. So it's very important to do that. So a question to ask ourselves is, who have we come to be? Who have we come here to be? And when asking this question, we need to keep in mind that we are spirit in human form having a spiritual experience. So, I think we can actually ask that question of, who has spirit, God, or good come here to be as or through me today?
Would you repeat that, please?
Yes. Who has spirit, God, or good come here to be as or through me today? So I'm setting a consciousness of how I can show up at the highest level of beingness, the divine being, the universal, the absolute, the perfect, the whole, the complete, all of those things. Because that's where it all rests, is in that. I've tried the whole human experience thing, as many of us I'm sure have, and it didn't work so good. But when I found these principles, when I found this in my life changed for the better. And it was amazing how it changed quickly and efficiently as I began. Because I had shifted into a new idea of who I was, as we all do. And that's what spirituality is knowing who we are and waking ourselves up to that. What I have said so far brings us to my last point, and that is life or spirituality is our inside-out job. As we learn in this community, our life is a mirror reflection of our world around us. Would you agree? What's going on inside of me is happening out there. So, when we look at that, Ernest Holmes tells us sometimes, because sometimes when we're looking at that, there's a couple of quotes I want to share from him. The first one is, and I love this quote because it really makes you think. You have to stop and really think about it. What you are looking for is what you are looking with. So if you're looking for a God outside of you, guess what? It's actually here. Because that's where it exists. So what you are looking for, you're looking with. Isn't that amazing? Mm-hmm. I love that. Because it stops you and makes you really go deeper. And really think about what it is that I'm saying, what it is that I'm believing. Because that's important. And then he goes on to say, and I love this one, life is a mirror and will reflect back to the thinker what he thinks into it. Ouch. Right? That's the big ouch. Especially when the stuff shows up and you're like going, whoa, wait a minute, what am I thinking here? What am I believing? What am I buying? What am I accepting as truth? Now, it doesn't mean we get stuck into that idea of, what was I thinking that created that in my world? But it's good to look at what's going on in your world, what's reflecting back to you, to say, what do I need to know? How do I need to move forward? Because we never know what thoughts, what beliefs, what things may have gone into our world years ago that have still been floating around in that subconscious energy. You know, I love this. Barbara Fewitt said to me the other day, she says, you know, our consciousness is kind of like our iPhone. If you just leave all those apps running in the background, it kind of draws on the battery. So we need to go through, we need to close those apps, right? We need to close those apps because they're pulling on our energy. They're drawing our energy down. So I can be as focused on what I want as I want to be, and yet, if those apps are open in the background, I need to clear them. I need to close them. It's a powerful realization, and it gives you a great idea of how that works. So when we talk about that, we're talking about the reciprocal nature of the universe. And this reciprocal nature of the universe can and will guide us in where our work is to be done. Where I need to close that app. Because that app is not working. Or I'm finished with that app. So I need to close it. It's like the desktop on a computer. You can have 9,000 things opened on your desktop on the computer. Rev Ed does this to me all the time. I'll go into Google and I'll see all of these things. And it'll be like, oh, this computer is so slow. And I'll say, yes, because you have 9,000 things opened on Google. So yes, it's slow because it's holding all that other stuff and trying to keep that there for you while you're doing more. And so it's good to clear out what doesn't serve us anymore, right? Clear our minds, clear our hearts, and step into the truth of who we are. So I remember when I first began a New Thought, I worked for an insurance company. It was an insurance agency. We were a policy issuing agency for lawyers, errors, and omissions products. So it was their insurance for what mistakes lawyers can make. Not that they do, because we've seen their ads. They don't make mistakes, but but so in this work, I worked for a woman who was an independent contractor in the company, and she had set what she felt she could pay me. Well, you know how sometimes you find out things about other people who are working in the same office, and you find out that you're working for the busiest and strongest agent in the community, and yet you're being paid less than someone who's doing less work. And you go, ooh. And at that time, I was a New Thought, but I was, I immediately went to that old place, right? That old place of, I'm worth more. What the hell's going on? This is bad. What's wrong with this? All that stuff. You know how we do that? We get into that place. And then it was like I went, wait a minute. I'm reading these books. I'm going to this Sunday service. I'm learning from Reverend Dr. Ann at that time, that it's like, what do I need to do here? And I realized that I had to, at that time I kind of like knew about affirmations and positive thinking. So I was creating an affirmation that would help me to understand that I am worthy of abundance in my life. And interestingly enough, as I worked on that affirmation, and I created that in my world, it was truly amazing, that what happened is there was a shift in the company, and they decided to make all of the administrative assistants for the agents employees. And what that did is it brought me a huge increase in pay. So I had set a consciousness. I had gotten out of the poor me or damn them, right? Because it's poor me or damn them, right? That's what we tend to go to. No, instead I went to that place of, I am an abundant child of the universe and I am worthy of receiving my good. And I did. So that's the power of it. We're using this all the time, are we not? And it's becoming consciously aware of how I'm using it. And that's what it all boils down to. So, interestingly enough, at that time, all I knew was like a couple of spiritual practices. But I used those spiritual practices. The beauty of what I found when I came to Science of Mind was that I had tons of spiritual practices. So if something's not working, I can go to something else, can I not? So I have all of these tools, the spiritual toolbox. Visioning, meditation, journaling, all the different things that we can do. And that's why we take classes, is to open our consciousness into a greater expression and heal. And I hate to say heal, because we don't heal anything, we simply reveal the truth. But we heal the old ideas. We let them go. We surrender them. And so that's what we do here. So we all have things in our lives that limit us, would you agree, from time to time? And we are always a choice to step into our greater yet to be. Always at choice. And so we need to take that choice. Are you willing to give your human form the awesome spiritual experience you have come here to have?
Yes.
So, why not believe in yourself? Why not try every day to believe in yourself? The universe does. God does. Whatever word we want to use for that infinite power. It knows you're awesome. So all you have to do is step into that awesomeness. Anybody for that?
Yep.
I know I'm ready for some stepping into some awesome stuff. So when I love this one, I want to share this quote with you because I got this from Emma Curtis Hopkins. If you name your good, do not fail to say, my good is my unlimited support, my unfailing support. I love that little quote in there. Good is my unlimited support, my unfailing support. The good will soon bring you marvelous support. New will be made for you. There is no limit to the bounty of truth, capital T. The substance of truth, capital T, is shown by the happy prosperity which can come to you and is sure to come when you speak. Truth, capital T. You think she's talking about something here? She's kind of getting us back to the basics, back to who we are. Speak truth with a capital T. I don't have to accept any other truth but the truth of the divine, and that I am a divine being. And that's what we have to do. Now, Emma Curtis Hopkins, of course, being the teacher of teachers, she taught Nona Brooks. And she was one of the 3 women who brought forward divine science. And so when I was blessed to be in Colorado this last week, well, the week before actually, it was so cool because Rev Rick decided that because he knew somebody who actually works in the Denver Divine Science building. It's no longer a Divine Science church, but it is still the building that Nona Brooks built in 1921. It cost $90,000 in 1921 to build that building. She paid cash. She paid cash and had one of the more famous architects of that area design the building. It was awesome to stand in that building and to feel that and realize that Ernest stood on that platform in that center, in that building. It was amazing. As a matter of fact, we heard the story, and I love this little story. I just want to share that with you. Is that when Nona Brooks was speaking, it was when Ernest Holmes was very young, and he was there, and he saw her, and he just was mesmerized by her. And at the end of her talk, when she was speaking to people, she went down to Ernest and she said, "You need to be doing this." So we have Nona Brooks to thank for our Ernest Holmes, because she set a consciousness into form, right? She believed and she saw the light in him, and she nurtured that light. And that's what we do.
Yes.
We try to nurture each other's light. Yes, we fall down, but that's okay. Sometimes I fall down and you come and help me. Sometimes you fall down and I come and help you. But that's what community is about. And that's what this teaching is about. Is no matter who's falling down around us, we're lovingly there at the right time in the right moment. You know, my relationship with Rev Ed, I'm always going through, places where I may be having trouble or questioning where I am in faith, and he's able to be that light and stand for me. And when he is in that place of questioning who he is or his faith, I'm able to be that light for him. And so we're constantly helping each other in this journey. That's what we're here for. Because we can see the true divinity, can we not? That's when I see divinity. Is when we come together in community and stand in truth. And that's what we're all about here. One of the questions I love to ask myself, and I'm sure you have heard me say this, is showing God a good time. Right? If my life is kind of sucky at the moment, am I showing God a good time? Probably not. So I'm going to ask you this week to think about, as you go through your week, am I showing God a good time in this moment? Most especially in those times when we feel like we're out of alignment, because that'll kind of bring you back, right? Bring you back to center. So that's my ask of you this week, is to do that. Will you do that with me? Sure. Awesome. So let's show God a good time, baby. Namaste.
Namaste.
Now is the time for our spiritual mind treatment. So you can relax and get comfortable, whatever that means to you, whether you want to close your eyes or not. Relax your body, your hands. Center your feet on the floor so you can be grounded to this space and be propelled into the next. And let's just relax and breathe in that air where we're not sure where breath begins and where it ends, because that is the essence of spirit. And I speak my word knowing the power of it in it and through it. I speak my word knowing that I, each one here, fully embodies and embraces the essence of our spiritual truth, the oneness that is shared with God, God who I also call Spirit. And with the power of this word and setting the intention of a recognition and an ownership and a faith so strong, knowing that I am one with God and that each one here is one with God, and this is known, seen, felt, and understood. I recognize this one power and presence, the presence of Spirit, the divine light of truth and grace and love. I recognize this presence, this power, this creative architect of all things seen and unseen, knowing the goodness, the love, and the grace in and through all of creation. I recognize God's power of bounty and infinite possibility and guidance, of evolution and transformational experience that is present because it is God that is in and through all things. And recognizing this power and presence, I know I am one with Source. I am one with God. I am one with the grace that is the essence of God. I am one with the light, the energy, the transformation, the power in transformation that is the essence of God. And I know that my oneness is in divine, perfect order. And I know this is true for each one here. Each one is one with the one. One with Spirit, one with all of the love in the universe, all the infinitude, all of the power. Each one is one with the master architect of this grace-filled universe. Each one is one with all of the loving energy in and through all of creation. Each one is transformative, beauty, bounty, vitality, health and perfect form, peace and love and light. And I declare and proclaim in the here and now that this oneness that is the birthright, that is the essence of each one here, is divinely ordained. That each one has the mind of God, the heart of God, the body of God, and the life of God, divinely ordained and carried out in perfect order, grace and beauty. That each one shares a unique path, a unique truth, a unique vision of life that is manifested in human form. Each one is guided through the still small voice, through intuition, through the path of life, guided to other beings of truth, guided to experience the messages of God through vessels put in the path. I know and proclaim that each one is whole, each one here is free, a free spirit to be, to choose the life of God that is unique to each one, that is described to each one through the soul, through the spirit, through the heart, that is perfectly felt, shaped, and formed in this silence, in communion with Spirit. I declare that each one is free to choose what the Spirit is seeking, what the soul is seeking, free to listen without judgment. Each one is free to live in acceptance, in observation. And knowing this, I'm grateful. I'm blessed to be in communion with the Spirit of God, knowing that each one here who also shares this truth has the perfect life, the perfect path, and shares a bond so great with a masterful teacher, illustrator, creator, guide, compass, and litmus, test of peace, to live the life that is God ordained. I'm grateful for knowing this with all of the faith and conviction in my heart, mind, body, and soul. And I release this word into the action of divine law, knowing that it is done, that the essence of oneness is felt in the heart of each one here. I release this word knowing that it is done, that as each one listens in the essence of this oneness, with the faith and conviction of this oneness, that each one is guided in light, in love, in peace, beauty, and truth. And there is peace in that, there is honor in that. And I release this word with a full heart. Blessed be, and together we say, and so it is.
So it is. Thank you. So, let's join together in our affirmation. Freedom is the ability to love myself as I am, and I do love myself as I am. Let's do that again. Freedom is the ability to love myself as I am, and I do love myself as I am. All right, that comes from Reverend Martha Quintana, is Senior Minister, Rio Grande, CSL. Of course, I added that little tagline because they thought we needed to claim that. All right, awesome. So we bid farewell to our Facebook Live family.